Okay, Curtis, we're live whenever you're ready.
All right, here we go. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Curtis Michaelis. I am here representing Mount Allison University, and that's who's sponsoring this session. But I wanted to switch things up and do things a little bit different for you and not necessarily just give you a pitch about Mount A. Mount A is a great school. I trust my audience, if you're here attending this session on tips on how to be an effective campus leader, I figure, my audience is already an intelligent audience. And I'm just going to leave it to you to go discover the joys and the wonders of Mount Allison as an institution. It's a lovely place. I am a proud graduate myself. I did attend. But I'm so excited today to talk to you about not Mount Allison. That's what I typically do in my job every day. And what I'd like to kind of more guide this session on is kind of more talking to you and giving you some advice, taking the opportunity where I might be talking to some really amazing student leaders or student leaders in the making out there. My focus today is really just to give you some tips, some advice, some things from my experience over my time as a student, my 10 plus years in recruitment and admissions, traveling the globe, engaging with incredible students from all over the world in my time with Mount Allison. Really, I want to impart some things to you today that maybe you're just going to be able to take with you. Hey, if you end up at Mount A, I'm going to be thrilled. That's going to be awesome. You'll probably even work with me at some point over the admissions process, or maybe even get a signed letter from me. We do things fairly personal and we have a small team. But maybe you're going to end up somewhere else. And I understand that Mount Allison being a small school, not everyone is going to attend there, and that's totally okay. There's so many great institutions. Maybe you've heard from many of them here already as part of this fair over the course of the last day and today so far. If you're planning, you got great, good, big goals and dreams in mind of where you want to study, that's fantastic. And I encourage you to do your research and to explore those options, talk to individuals like myself when you're considering your options. But really for myself here today, I want to give you advice that you're going to be able to take with you wherever you go, whether that's Mount A or somewhere else. And so my presentation is really about how to stay on top of staying involved. It's all about tips and advice on effective campus leadership. I'm so excited. I'm not even sitting in my chair. I might feel like I'm talking down at you, but I really don't want to, because that's not what we're doing when we're talking about leadership. Now, there are these ideas of leadership. Now, this is maybe kind of an old, antiquated version, this idea of following the leader. And this is kind of what leadership's all about, right? There's one person in charge and everyone else is going to fall in line and follow that individual, right? That's kind of how we understand leadership, right? Well, I'm going to kind of challenge that idea over the course of this presentation. And I've come to learn that leadership is much more of a collaborative process. I don't think it requires a title or a position, to be honest with you. I don't think you need to be the VP or the president or in a senior leadership role within an organization or even a club or society within your school. I don't think it takes that to be a leader. I think it comes from something a little bit deeper and some things that I'm going to really cover today. So really, when we're talking about leadership, I'm talking about leadership as a collaborative process. It's this idea that leadership involves many different individuals coming together. It's complex, it's dynamic. There isn't really a best theory about leadership. When you get out there and start to dig into the books and whether it's academic research on the concept, and there's lots of that out there, or you're picking up those self-help books and they're talking about leadership, I think you're going to come to find there really isn't a one neat and tidy, easy definition about what leadership is all about. It is complex. It involves many participants, lots of different people, like I said, coming together to make things happen. And at the end of the day, it really is driven by relationships. It's people being able to work together, communicating, across sometimes in the scope across the entire world, people kind of coming together and being able to make really complex things happen. One definition that I did get that I thought was useful that I included here is leadership as a relational and ethical process of people together attempting to accomplish positive change. I kind of like that idea. And this is actually coming from some research specifically into leadership and student leaders. It's exploring leadership for college students who want to make a difference. So that's kind of, again, what I'm going to be focusing on a little bit today, contextualizing this presentation, given that I'm speaking about university and that I'm talking to maybe some prospective students that are thinking about their university options. The majority of the presentation on leadership is going to kind of focus on this idea of student leadership in high school and on campuses. And I would say there are a few better places in the entire world where all these things come together, all the different facets of leadership and that collaboration. It's a few better places that's better exemplified than on a university campus. When you think about all the different departments that are involved just to make a university run, everything from the different academic faculties, maybe there's some complex research going on in the sciences. You might have to have laboratories where you're housing fish populations like we have in our aqua lab at Mount A. You might be then dealing in libraries and archives, the art gallery where they're dealing with very old works of art that need to be even hung and transported and moved around the country in a very specific way. We just had a big art truck transporting some valuable works to our campus recently, and I learned that it had to be transported in a temperature controlled truck to make sure that it wouldn't be impacted or damaged. So, there's lots of different things that have to be involved in that process of getting that thing from point A to point B. But universities also have, facilities management that are working on making sure that the systems of the university are working correctly. You're going to have food services. There's lots of different pieces on a university campus. And it's one of the reasons why I truly love working at a university. I graduated from Mount Allison back in 2009, and I didn't really, to be honest with you, see myself staying in this role much longer than a few years. I had this idea of, that sounds like a cool job. I'll go promote Mount A, a place I loved and really enjoyed in my time as a student. I'll go maybe travel around the country, around the globe, have some cool experiences. I didn't really see myself working, long term at the university, but as year over year went, I realized how much I enjoyed the atmosphere, the different relationships I was able to be developing, the different insights into those different departments and industries that were all kind of present on the university campus, and really got an appreciation again for how they all work together. Mount A is a small place. There's a lot going on in that small place, but it's really connected. And so I just, as one individual in our small community, have gotten some insights into the way things work. So I could, like I said, drone on to you today about how awesome Mount A is, but again, that's not what I'm going to do. Go check into why we might be ranked the #1 undergraduate university more times than any other primarily undergraduate university in the country. Hey, I'll leave that for you to go and explore and discover. But here's what I'm going to hope to provide to you today. So I'm hoping that I can provide maybe a more comprehensive view on what an effective campus leader is. I'm hoping to give you some honest tips and advice, my own experience. I have lots of them. I'm that guy who was, our class president back in grade 6, and I just continued. I always wanted to be involved. I got involved in lots of different things. It led me to a place like Mount A that's kind of known for involved students. It led me to getting a great scholarship, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, about some of the benefits of why you might want to be a campus leader and some of the things you're going to do. But, I've also had some bad experiences along the way. There's been a lot of good, but there's been some bad, some mistakes I've made. I'm going to try to help you all learn maybe from those mistakes, so that when you're considering making decisions in your own journey through post-secondary, maybe you'll be able to reflect on, Curtis already did that. We don't want to go down that road. We're going to learn from his mistakes. So I'll try to share some of that with you too. I'm going to give you some ideas, some items for you to meditate on, things for you to reflect on as you continue to develop what leadership means to you. Because like I said, there's no one best definition, no one best theory. It's going to come down to you, your unique context, your unique circumstances, and what it is you're trying to do. So first, Curtis, who am I? You guys might want to know a little bit about who's talking to you. Maybe you don't, but I'm going to tell you anyway. You're here, and I hope you're still with me. So some of the things I like to do in my time, like I said, I've always been that kind of guy in my school community. I grew up in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, very close to Halifax, Nova Scotia, just over the harbor. I went to a large public high school. I was always just, again, from the time I was in elementary, I was always trying to get involved. I liked playing sports. I always have been an athletic and active guy. I played lots of different sports over my time, but I would say soccer is probably my most competitive sport. So when I trained the most in and went and played university with Mount A for, I also give back to the sport in a lot of ways by coaching, by getting involved in our local soccer club and trying to give back that way. So I've held every position on our local board now close to us in Amherst, Nova Scotia. I think what I enjoy most, though, is the coaching, but I still get involved in lots of different ways and give back to the sport that gave a lot to me. This is a picture of me. Maybe embarrassed myself a little bit, but hey, I'm thinking about growing it back out. My wife's not so sure about it. But back when I was maybe a little closer to your age, I was going through the same things you're probably going through. I was thinking about where I want to go, what I want to do, all those things, those big questions that people start to ask you when you get into high school. What do you plan to be? Where are you going to go for university? And you don't always feel like you have a great answer if you already know that sort of thing. Perfect. That's lovely. But if you're sitting out there and you're not exactly sure, just know I was exactly in the same boat. I didn't even make my final decision for university until right down to the wire. So if you're someone that needs to take your time, you're weighing your options, I totally relate, and I would encourage you to do so. There's lots of time in the process to make those big decisions. Me now, I am an admissions counselor. I've been working with Mane for a long time, and like I said, I've traveled the globe. I've loved my time in that role. But in my spare time, I like to think there's a lot more to an individual than just their professional self. And some of the things that give me enjoyment and fulfillment, believe it or not, I get myself into a little bit of rap and hip hop. I'm a lyricist, and I've done that for a long time. Maybe it's the Dartmouth. That's part of kind of the culture growing up there. It's more of a hip hop town, but it's just something I got involved in. I wasn't a very good musician, but I wanted to be involved. So for me, this is something that I enjoy doing. It's a nice release, even just to, have a nice mental health release when you need to write out some things that you're going through, process some things, and then, hey, have a little cipher session and spit it out. So what I'd say to you when it comes to leadership, there is a science to it in a sense. There are certain things that if you do are generally going to lead to you being considered an effective leader, but it is certainly not a pure science. It's not only a science. There is definitely an art to the way that you do things. And I like that. It means that you get to put your own style and your own twist on it as well. And like we said, there's no exact one way to do it. There's no one set blueprint. But leadership, I'd say, through everything I've kind of learned, it's really best practiced. It's not simply envisioned. Oh, this is what should be done. This is what happened. Kind of that theory versus practice idea. I think you start to learn things by applying them, by doing them, reflecting on how it went. Okay, that didn't really play out how I envisioned once it was put into practice. Next time, I'm maybe going to have to adjust that a little bit. So it's kind of always fine tuning. In short, that's kind of my idea of it. And I've held many leadership roles in my time as an individual, whether it's in the soccer club, when I was, doing my performing in hip hop at university. For me, it wasn't just about, going out and having a show. I wanted to kind of create a scene in Little Sackville, which is a musical town, but not one known for hip hop. So in my time, I would reach out to larger, musicians, everyone from Classified here on the East Coast and Ghetto Sock, some of our bigger artists, and I try to bring them up for shows. Now, I'd get a great opportunity to be able to perform, but one role I took on was actually with our student union. I got involved on the entertainment committee. So I actually had a budget and I was responsible for bringing in those different groups. So even in that activity, you were able to kind of apply these things you've learned through leadership. How can I grow a scene? How can I reach out to others? How can I collaborate? How can I make something bigger than just myself? And so that's kind of, part of this process. One thing I also think about it is I got to hold a position as a manager for a few years in our office, and I certainly got to learn to every day, is a good challenge when you're in that kind of role, to be reflecting and trying to keep everybody happy and an organization running. But when I was a student, you're not necessarily in that kind of responsible role where you're paid. A lot of it's going to be driven by things that are just, it's kind of like an inherent motivation you have. I want to make change. And I felt this way when I was a student. I wanted to challenge things. I saw the way things were being done. And I thought, maybe there's a better way that we can do it. Maybe there's someone else who has an interest in making this better as well. And I got to know a lot of individuals on campus. Mount A is known to be a school that attracts the kind of student leader, the involved type of student. So I wasn't alone as that type of individual on a campus like this. And over time, I met, like I said, so many different individuals from so many different backgrounds, whether they were, international students who had arrived to Mount Allison from halfway around the world, or they were, a local student from Sackville who had been kind of a leader in their school community. I met lots of people. And these are kind of some common things that I see. Again, like we said, there's no science to it. There's no exact profile or blueprint of a campus leader. But these are some things over time that I think when it boiled down to it, just some common things you tend to see that are present in most effective student leaders in my experience. So, as you see these kind of descriptors, maybe you want to think about, these are some things I'm either strong in myself, or, maybe I could end up being a bit better of a listener, or maybe a little bit more open, or, hey, maybe I need to develop my critical capacities and dig in a little bit. But generally, people are going to be respectful. I think that's one of the most important things. You're going to be dealing with so many different individuals. If you're in a leadership role and position, you're often having to represent things or represent people. So just having that respect coming into things. It doesn't mean you can't challenge. It doesn't mean you can't question. But I think the way you approach things is really important. Being empathetic, kind of understanding different people's positions and situations, and understanding, others' experiences is just so critical in this kind of complex world that we live in, where there are so many different experiences that people have gone through that we don't always see. In many cases, kind of, people are going through challenges that might not be visible to everyone. So I just think kind of taking that empathetic approach, kind of feeling a room is important too. If you start to talk or address an issue and you kind of feel that tension, you're starting to notice that you're being a bit empathetic. You're kind of connecting to, those other emotions that are happening in the room. Those are the things that are being felt. Strategic, you don't get very far without thinking a little bit ahead and what you're trying to do. That's kind of part of that planning process. So I think most people aren't reacting, in the moment. They have an idea of what they're trying to do, and they're working systematically in some kind of approach to get there. If you can kind of take that longer term strategy, I think you'll, for one, just likely sort through your thought and your idea a little bit better by thinking about it in that kind of way. And then kind of understanding this, old adage, the idea that, a place wasn't built in a day. That's kind of true. It's going to take some time, but if you can kind of, think about those different steps in the process, it's going to be important. So being strategic, definitely key. Being a good listener, again, at times you're pushing an agenda, you're looking to make change, you want to shout to the rafters and let everybody know about, what's going on. And that's important at times, to make that kind of noise. But I think probably more important, especially initially, is to kind of come in and listen, kind of assess, scope the scene, get a sense where others' heads are at, and where people land on certain positions. And then you kind of know your audience, the different stakeholders involved in a decision, and kind of where they sit. And that allows you to be a bit more strategic, maybe in how you're going to communicate or approach those individuals. So listening is really key. Some of the best senior leaders I've seen, coming through the university, in those VP and president roles. And no doubt those people get there for a reason. In many cases, they've kind of demonstrated these sort of things, from a young age, and kind of built up their leadership capacities. But, the best ones that I see, they don't come in to lead a department or, a division of an organization and just right away start saying, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. This person over here and this person over here. Usually those people kind of come in with a little bit more. They want to learn. They want to talk to other individuals, staff at varying levels, and get a sense, okay, well, what's happening? Well, similarly, as a student, maybe coming into your first year at university, maybe you're super passionate about an issue, and that's great. I love when students are passionate, and at our institution, we encourage that sort of thing, even if, it at times paints the institution in not a great light. Hey, that's part of it, and that's part about becoming better and being accountable. And so our students, in many cases are the ones who are the first to raise their voices at those sorts of things and point out things that are not ideal at our institutions. But I think also when you come in that first year, if you start making that noise in your very first few weeks on campus, you never know, maybe you don't have the issue completely figured out. Maybe you haven't assessed the whole scene. So I just encourage people to be a good listener and come in and talk to people. Part of being a listener is then engaging and having those conversations. Being open then to what's being fed to you. It's good to kind of come at things openly. It doesn't mean you have to accept everything. It doesn't mean you have to agree with everything. But it is nice to come into conversations, and especially on a university campus where there are going to be so many differing and diverging opinions and viewpoints and people from different backgrounds and experiences, and so much to learn. I know I thought I had it all figured out at the end of high school, and you quickly learn, when you get to university that there is a lot to learn. And through my courses, everything I was doing, my involvements in my extracurriculars, everything was kind of informing my understanding about the world, my place within it, my understandings of it, and kind of my position, within certain issues. So I think that kind of reflection comes about being open with yourself, open to others. But I would suggest that there is a point to become critical. It's not just accepting everything that comes your way. And I think these are the capacities that we try to, impart our graduates with from universities, particularly at our university in Mount Allison, to, develop those critical thinkers, those critical capacities that are going to allow you to look at an issue and not just take it at face value, be able to delve a little bit deeper into it, be able to scratch away at the surface, but to do so in a researched way, to understand that it's not just a spur of the moment opinion that you're opining. It's going to be, well-read, understanding, digging deeper into an issue so that you're going to have kind of a deeper knowledge and understanding when you're approaching it, maybe engaging individuals on it. So that's what we'd encourage. And part of that isn't about knowing everything about every issue. It's about knowing how to find information out about an issue, or how to analyze or assess information about an issue, kind of being those things like media literacy and understanding. We all know, we've seen the Facebook posts. Sometimes there's more validity to it than other times, but you got to be able to decipher those things. So being critical is important. Being disciplined, this is one that shouldn't be overstated, underlooked. It takes discipline to be a leader. Again, there's going to be things expected of you. Some students might just be going through their university experience, going to their class and, having a good time, going through the motions, not taking on those extra things that if you're here listening to this session and trying to take all this in, that you're likely that type of person. Not everybody, is like that. It takes discipline to be that kind of person, because it takes work to be organized, to be strategic, to do all these things. It takes time, it takes effort. And sometimes, when you're living a busy life as a student, all the fun that can happen with university campuses, at times you might have to make those difficult decisions. If you're serious about, a certain cause, maybe have a big meeting that next day with the mayor of the town to talk about a big issue that's important to, your student cause. Maybe that's not the night to go out and have a late social night. These are decisions that students will make. And again, I've made good ones, I've made bad ones along the way. But from my experience and advice, I would say, that discipline can really come into the long-term benefits of that discipline have really shown, over the course of my life, and of those individuals I've seen who have taken that kind of approach to things, the benefits for them are endless. Being motivated, I think it comes without question. You're not generally this type of person that wants to get involved with these sorts of things unless you are motivated in some capacity. But that motivation can maybe come in peaks and valleys, come in waves. It's those low points where it's difficult. You've got a lot of other things on your plate. Maybe it's exam week. It's that motivation to push through, to keep going, to get it done, while still remembering to take time and take care of yourself and all those other things. There are times where maybe being purely driven through ambition and motivation isn't going to be the best approach. But if your motivation at the end of the day is to create positivity and change, well, part of that then is going to be also about taking care of yourself. So you're in that position to be able to maintain that sort of thing long term. Now, I add the ellipsis here because obviously there's so many other things that are commonly known within leaders. I'm sure we could sit here and talk and add lots of adjectives to this list that would make sense. These are just some of the ones that I thought, were important to highlight and maybe aren't always immediately evident when you're thinking about just generally what a leader is. But I think all these skills at the end of the day are really things that are going to aid you in building relationships, developing, maintaining, having those relationships. The kind of long-termness of a relationship it's kind of inherent within the word. It's not about a conversation, something that happens, as a one-off. A relationship is something that's ongoing. Well, something that's ongoing, as we probably all know, we've probably all had friendships in our time. We all have family, and I love my family, as I'm sure many people do, but at times, you got to work on those relationships at times too. Maybe as a high school student right now, getting ready to go away from home, dealing with rules, all kinds of different stuff. Well, hey, you got to maintain that relationship with your parents, especially as you go on to university. They're going to be looking out for you from home base. But, relationships are key. So I would just say, every instance, every conversation, every moment can impact a relationship. So as you're developing that relationship, that's certainly something to be mindful of, and how you approach every situation. I think it's good to take kind of a tact or an approach to, kind of be consistent in how you approach situations, how you treat people, your attitude and your mentality going into things. Again, kind of keeping in mind all those adjectives, but keeping in mind certainly the respect piece too, as you're going into any situation. So I think this is important. You never know, especially on a university campus or a small one like ours, you can be kind of known for your actions very quickly in a small university campus. And so if you maybe rub some people the wrong way, you come in a little bit too hot in a certain situation, you never know, maybe that individual. And I'll give you an example. I was doing a music performance in my first year. It was a show that I was just on the bill for, going to be playing at. And the email went out, and I think my name was left off the bill or something like that. And so I sent this email off to the organizer. I didn't know who they were, but I was upset, and how could they leave me off? I can't remember exactly the details, but I remember I wrote kind of a hot email that I probably should have sat on and maybe edited the next day. And that's some advice I'll have for you later. It came to find out that individual, was not too happy with my email. They were a volunteer working hard to put the show together, and it was an honest mistake. And that was someone that within my then friend circle, they were a senior student. One of my best friends started dating their best friend, and all of a sudden we had to hang out all the time, and that person kept giving me the stink eye after a while. Well, I had to work my way back in. I had to, work at that relationship. I had to develop it. I had to win back their trust and let them know I wasn't a jerk. I was just a little bit upset that day, but it was a lesson learned. And so you can learn from those lessons, but I'd say learn from me. Sit on that email before you send it. That's going to be one of my pieces of advice for you just a little bit later. So some things to think about, some things to meditate, reflect on. Like I said, everybody is different. I might have my own passions and causes. One of the things I was passionate about at Mount A, beyond, developing a music scene and doing this, that, and the other thing, is really just greening our campus and trying to get the institution. I was a geography student, a sociology student, and environmental issues were something of interest to me. I knew I could make some change and impact at our institution. And I knew a lot of other like-minded students in our program who were interested in this. And we luckily had a great professor that brought us all together for a strategic issues class, where we developed an entire strategy to be able to essentially get Mount Allison to start tracking its emissions output as an institution. Now you have to think this was back in 2007. Institutions were doing this, but it wasn't necessarily the common expectation for them to do so. But we were kind of thinking, as an institution that's supposed to be a leader in society, we can't just be talking the talk, we got to walk the walk. And so we wanted to push the institution to start a baseline so we could start actively working to reduce our carbon footprint. But we didn't just want to go to the president's door and start banging and knocking on the door. we had an approach to it. So we kind of, asked them for an audience. We developed an entire strategy of the different ways that they could improve the university. And we actually did that research over the course of a whole term, so that when it came to talking about our food services, we were able to really discuss things in a data-driven way and say, hey, this is kind of some of the numbers. These are some ways you actually could reduce through additional composting, blah, blah, blah. We came up with a whole host of strategies and different policies that could be implemented. And hey, we were able to get that audience, and we were able to have some impact on the institution. And I was one of the students that got to write that policy with the senior administrators as a third-year student going into my fourth year. So that was a pretty phenomenal experience. And it was also just a cool thing. So I'd ask you, when you're out there, this is something I was passionate about. What is your focus? What is it that you are trying to do? How are you trying to make that change? And I think that how is really important as well. And you want to think about that. What are the ways that you can possibly get to where you want to be with your focus, your cause? Is whether that's within your institution, maybe it's at your high school, maybe it's something you're dealing with right now, or maybe this is something when you get to university that's going to come to you. Maybe it's something you already have in mind. But think about it within your institution. How can you kind of make that change, keeping in mind that importance of respect and communication, and kind of knowing your community members? Keep it a broad process, consult people, talk to different people, keep people involved. Don't necessarily go as a one-person army. Think externally, okay? Here in my local situation, this is what's going on. Well, are there similar issues that are happening regionally, maybe provincially, maybe nationally, maybe internationally? Maybe there's a whole network of other people battling and striving and dealing with the exact same thing you are. Maybe they've already started something and put it into place, and there's a great way that you can contribute to that cause. So try to link what you're doing to kind of those broader networks, those broader, focuses. It's always going to expand, and there's always likely some other individuals, some way that you can scale up your idea or connect it to a bigger picture. So think about that. Within yourselves, this is a big one. Or within your others, maybe you're trying to shift someone's mindset, or maybe, you need to think about shifting your own mindset, or you're trying to expand, learn more about an idea, come at it from a different angle, doing that kind of deep research. But this is part of it, trying to make change, within an institution, within a given region, and then certainly within ourselves. Some of the ways that emotionally intelligent leadership works. So when we think about this idea of like emotional intelligence, EQ, you hear it. What's your, instead of your IQ, what's kind of your EQ? It really kind of boils down to these three things. And I read a big book about this, but hey, I'm going to save you that trouble and boil it down to the most important things I learned from that book. And that's really kind of this idea of like, those layers, and think of it as a Wi-Fi signal. Everybody recognizes this, I should imagine, but it is this idea of signal strength, kind of getting, a little bit stronger, reaching a wider space, the further you go out. The first one is that idea of the self. So you got to have a consciousness of yourself. What are your abilities? What are your kind of perceptions? What emotions do you hold? How do you approach an issue? All these ideas about knowing yourself, this knowledge of self, it's a pretty, again, old adage, the idea of knowledge of self being fairly key, but it kind of will allow you to maybe direct your energies. What are you really best at? Maybe you're given leadership is collaborative. It's not necessarily about one individual taking charge and making a whole change. It's about contribution. So given your skill set, your abilities, how can you contribute to that cause? What is something you could offer, to help in that larger picture cause? As you go a little bit bigger, you start to think then about others. Okay, well, all those around me. Now we're working in a team. All of a sudden, okay, we have to have an awareness about who's who has what abilities, how are we going to collaborate and cooperate to be able to achieve things efficiently? If I'm trying to promote an event and I'm a terrible graphic designer, but I'm a really good writer or copywriter, maybe I'm drafting up some promotional emails to send out, but I'm leaving it to someone else who's got those more artistic skills to be able to design the poster. You kind of come together with others, but knowing each other, part of that comes through talking and getting to know each other and understanding, and that kind of your perceptive ability, picking up on things. If you're a leader, you're in kind of a coordinator role, you're making sure everything happens and and works together, maybe you have to identify those individuals who have those, abilities and try to, encourage them, make sure that they're, able to feel confident to contribute in those ways. And a lot of that comes from just recognition and, suggesting and asking. If someone's good at something and you ask them to do it, often, they'll enjoy doing it because that's what they kind of enjoy doing and what they're good at. As you start to get then a little bit bigger, and this is the most important one, it's important to know yourself, it's important to know others, but the context, of the situation is so key. And it's one that's not as easy to grasp. It's one that might take a little bit of practice and learning, and that trial and error, that, getting your hands dirty, muddying things up a little bit and reflecting, okay, how did that go? Well, why might that not have worked in the way that I thought it was? Oh, there's this kind of bigger attitude that's kind of happening out there right now, or there was an event on campus that I wasn't aware of that impacted the way people think about a certain thing. And I was totally tone deaf in my approach to things because I just wasn't aware of the context of the situation. That's an important one. And context in today's day and age, in a complex world with lots of competing information and lots of different things to have to decipher, that context piece is really important. So it's all about kind of the setting, the situation, kind of knowing what you're wading into with your skill set as an individual, with your collective skill set as a team. What then is that setting and the situation that you're dealing with, and is it a ripe time for you to get the thing done that you need to get done? That's what you got to kind of analyze and assess. Not a straight answer. It's going to take some time, but my advice to you, and I'm almost at the end of my presentation, hopefully we'll have just a little time if there are any questions, but there's also easy ways for you to get in touch with me if you do want to stay in touch. So my advice at the end of the day: learn the lay of the land before you start shouting. So that's kind of that idea. When you come into a new environment, to a new place, maybe into a new grade, maybe in your senior year in grade 12 this year, maybe you've just come into high school and you're a grade 9 or 10 student, try to get a sense of what's around before you start making that noise. Observe. You'll be able to make that noise much more effectively. Identifying then campus stakeholders or institutional stakeholders. So what's a stakeholder? Is it someone that holds a stick? No, it's kind of people who are involved in an issue, people who are, going to be decision makers, people who have a stake in this situation. So that might be at your school, students, might have a stake in a certain decision being made. Maybe you want to get some student opinions before you start going advocating on the behalf of students. To kind of see where your peers land. Maybe it's administrators at a school, maybe it's teachers, maybe it's other staff members, maybe it's parents, there's different stakeholders, maybe there's community members, volunteers. Depending on what your issue, there's going to be different individuals. If you can identify those individuals, make some tactful contact, approach them respectfully. I think generally speaking, people are going to give you much more than you even came in looking for if you take that kind of approach. And if you do professionalize your approach, you take yourself seriously. I think that's important when you are making that contact. If you're looking to make change, be professional. Believe that you are a person who is absolutely capable, able, and should be, in a position to be able to do this. I think if you take yourself seriously, other people will too. But then, when you're on campus and your university and there's lots of different things going on, I think it's important not to take yourself maybe too seriously all the time as well. And part of that comes down to, having some self-care, being so serious all the time. You got to find those things that give you fulfillment, that are going to fill your tank, especially when, we are fighting causes, we're working towards issues, we're trying to make change. Sometimes it's not always easy. It's not always about kind of, uplifting things. Maybe, there's some serious challenges that you're kind of facing as you're going through this. Well, if you can find those ways to fill your tank, get that fulfillment. And that was one thing I did, like I said, through my music, and being able to kind of find that release that way. That was really important for me. So you got to find the thing that works for you. Definitely having allies is good. One of my pieces of advice is though, don't always necessarily hang with the choir. This idea of kind of preaching to the choir. Well, hanging with the choir, it means kind of people who have the exact same or very similar kind of ideas to you. These are great people to be around. These are going to be your people that are going to support you. You're going to go through, those challenges and struggles together. But I think you'll learn a lot when you also break outside of that a little bit, and especially you have that opportunity on a university campus. There's very few times in your life where it's going to be so easy for you to meet with so many different individuals in a small space, where the idea is to meet each other and to, talk ideas and that sort of thing. That's kind of what, university is for and all about. So I would just encourage you to engage with other people who are not kind of in your inner circle, learn about them, talk about them. Why do they think different ways? This is going to help you expand your knowledge and, if nothing else, become firmer in the way you think if after you've kind of gone out and tested your ideas against others. So seeing value in the task and kind of having a long-term gain. This idea is really just about, it's not about checking boxes off for a resume to get you into med school. Yes, getting involved on campus is going to help you in those competitive processes later on. But what I try to encourage students to think about, and I think this happens when you do find your focus and you're passionate about certain things, is, it's not just about that long-term gain. It's about each of those times you engage in an activity, engage in a task, and trying to see value just in that in and of itself, because you're going to learn things through that. It's that practicing leadership. So if you take that approach and it's not, I have to do this because it's going to get me here, you're not going to go into that wholeheartedly and with a full heart, your head dedicated to that kind of task. So I would just say, it's that idea of kind of living in the moment, essentially. Now, seeking out and attempting to understand difference, again, kind of plays into some of the earlier points, but something that I've really tried to do and I benefited from. And, coming to a liberal arts and science campus like Mount A, there's no real silos here. I got to meet with commerce students, science students, fine arts students, music students, and I was an art student, but we all got to share with each other, and I got to learn from a lot of people who are certainly very different from me, but amazing people. Think twice before clicking send. So this is that idea of your email. I like to write out the email when I'm mad. I'm not going to lie. It feels good sometimes to just get it out. You have something inside you. It's part of maybe me writing and being a writer, but rarely do I now press send on that email. The next day I sleep on it, I go back to it, and almost always I edit that email. It felt good. It's cathartic to get it out, but you don't necessarily always want to send that. There's usually a nicer way. And in hindsight, after I've done that approach and taken the time and really be careful with my thoughts and how I'm going to communicate to people, it really paid off, I think. And I think the situation at the end of the day resolved itself much better than if I would have sent a mean or nasty email. Taking opportunities to mentor and be mentored. So leading and following, I think I could still probably learn and improve on the being mentored one. I need to, it's something that others have told me a lot about mentoring, and it's something I'm going to continue working on. If anybody has got some advice for me out there, I would love to hear it too. So this is not just me talking again at anybody here. You'll have my email at the end. If anybody has some thoughts on my presentation, different things I can be thinking about, I would love that opportunity. So take those opportunities when people are going to share things with you. But also take that opportunity to impart the things you've learned. Maybe it's younger students, maybe you're in your grade 12 year, meet with those grade 9, grade 10 students, onboard them, help them, make them feel comfortable and bring them onto the team so that they're going to be effective in what they do too. So that's important. If you have the time, do it now, not later. It's just a simple one about procrastination. When you have that moment, that dilly-dallying, things pile up quickly at university. I will tell you that. So when you have the time, it's that motivation piece, get it done. You'll feel so much better about it, and you'll have time to do more and other things later, and you'll be less stressed generally. Trust me. Use your resources, know when to ask for help. We all need it. And this is another one I had to learn hard lessons in, but it's important when you're going through those low moments. People want to help you on a university campus, generally speaking. I can certainly speak from my experience at Mount A. It's a kind and caring community. Definitely don't be shy to ask for help in a place like this. And you're going to find there's so many helpful people. They're going to help you get to where you're trying to go. And again, get more than you even came in asking for. Final piece of advice, stay humble, stay hungry, stay happy as best as you can. Easier said than done, I am sure. But the humble piece and the staying hungry piece is going to help you with the happy piece. I think it's important to be humble in our approach, regardless of what we're doing, whatever role we're in, whatever change we're able to impact, knowing that it's not just you that helped get there. You can contribute, but We're all standing on the shoulders of giants here, people. So staying humble and recognizing that, and certainly recognizing, the work that's been done to get us to where we are today is never a bad thing to do. But staying hungry, recognizing that those sacrifices that people in the past have made, aren't just we don't want to take that for granted. So we stay hungry. We try to keep pushing, keep working and making that positive change. And when you're doing that, you're busy, you're fulfilled, you're going to be happier regardless, because you don't have much time to think about being happy. Now, I'm running a little short on time. I got a minute left in the presentation, but I essentially already told this story. It was the one where I was going to tell you about me impacting some change at my institution. These are some other things we did along the way. We created a green investment fund so people could actually invest in the community to do carbon reducing projects. We did a C3 challenge where all our residences were competing against each other to have the lower emissions input within a given month. And then that became a whole regional contest of all the Atlantic universities competing against each other. So that's how we kind of brought it up to a bigger scale. So I'll leave you with this. Any attempt to describe a social process as complex as leadership inevitably makes it seem more orderly than it is. Leadership is not tidy. Decisions are made and then revised or reversed. Misunderstandings are frequent. Inconsistency inevitable. Achieving a goal may simply make the next goal more urgent. Inside every solution are the seeds of new problems, and most of all, the time things are out of hand. No leader enjoys that reality, but every leader knows it. As much as this can feel depressing, it helps to highlight that leadership is a process. It's not simply a directive. Having this perspective can help you to place situations within their larger context. Be patient, be strategic, and when you hear that opportunity knock, be ever present to break down the door and meet it. Make no mistake, campus leadership requires sacrifice and a willingness to keep going. So I encourage all of you, keep going. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to be going now. If you do have any questions, you can reach out to me. I am an open book, curtis@mta.ca. In solidarity and with servitude, I thank you, and I hope you're all making great progress in your search for post-secondary. All right, everybody, have a great Saturday.